Now, for more on Brazil's political turmoil and Rousseff's impeachment saga, we're joined by Eric Farnsworth. He's Vice President of the Council of the Americas. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
So let's take a look at all that's happening. You have this historic recession, you have state-owned Petrobras embroiled in scandal, and now also this mismanaged government budget. So some Brazilians think maybe all these issues will be behind them once there's new leadership. What do you think about that?
Well, I hate to say this, but they may be disappointed. Not the least of which is because the impeachment process isn't over even when the Senate takes its vote, presumably tomorrow morning. When the Senate does take its vote, assuming it votes to impeach the president, she has to stay out of office then for 180 days. She leaves office. She's replaced immediately by the Vice President Temer. But then the Senate has to actually conduct a trial. And so this process is going to go on for several more months. It's going to go through the Olympics, et cetera. But even aside from the impeachment process, you do have this large scandal that's been enveloping the country called the Lava Jato investigation, basically the car wash in English, it's euphemistically called. But this is an investigation of corruption in terms of the politics and the business that's been enveloping Brazil for some time. That will go on. That's not going to be directly impacted by the result of the impeachment vote. So there's a long way to go. And then if you add on top of that the vice president, who, if and when he takes power, he doesn't have a whole lot of time to implement a strong or a policy of economic growth before the population is going to be looking for some real results. So there's a narrow window of time here. There's a lot that has to happen and has to fall right for Brazil to come out of this effectively.
So with all these elements and all this upheaval, if you're an investor, uncertainty is usually not your friend. How are they looking at this? How is it affecting foreign investment?
Business confidence isn't great. Brazil is always a difficult place to do business. A previous president of Brazil actually said Brazil is not for amateurs. And so I think that a lot of people look at it that way. Having said that, the opportunities in Brazil are huge. And I think you have to differentiate between the direct foreign investment, the bricks and mortar, the folks who want to put money in and where certainty is a huge issue, and then the portfolio investors or the financial markets, which actually have been doing quite well in this whole process, anticipating that, frankly, the president would be impeached, that she would be removed, and she would be replaced by a more business-friendly government. So those folks have been doing pretty well, at least for the short term. The question is that sustainable?
Now, in terms of it being sustainable, we're also looking at what is it really going to take for Brazil's economy to rebound? What do you think needs to happen? There's
a lot that needs to happen. Some of it's out of Brazil's hands. I mean, the top trade partner is China. As China slows, Brazil's economy necessarily takes a hit. Part of it is relation to the fact that Brazil is overly dependent on commodities. Being dependent on commodities isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when commodities go down, your economy suffers as well. So you have to diversify. Beyond that, though, you really have to reduce the cost of doing business in the country. You have to open the country up to international trade and investment. Brazil remains a very closed economy. You have to increase and improve infrastructure, so once you have the products, you can get it to market. There's a lot of things that have to go on. It's not that there are secrets here in Brazil. The question is, does the political will exist, and will it exist in the future to actually take these very difficult steps to implement the reforms that will be required to right Brazil's economy?
Now, let's look at also the reaction from the Brazilian stock market. How are they handling all this upheaval?
Well, again, a lot of it is you trade on the rumor, or you buy on the rumor and you sell on the result, right? So a lot of people have been buying on the rumor of impeachment, and I think the question is what happens if and when the president is really impeached. But the point is that, again, this process has to play itself out. We don't know the ultimate answer even in the next 24 hours, because then she'll be out of office for a period of time, there will be a trial, and then she has to have the opportunity to defend herself. So this isn't, we're not at the end of the scenario yet.
Now, what about some of Brazil's competitors? They're seeing all this upheaval, and as we're saying, investors don't like uncertainty. Are any of Brazil's competitors benefiting from this, or could they perhaps?
You know, probably not. First of all, I don't think anybody wants to see Brazil suffer economically. There's a lot of folks who really want them, including myself, to rebound as quickly as possible. And the countries that depend on Brazil, which might be targets for other investors, really, they need Brazil to do well for themselves to do well. Argentina, other countries in Latin America, certainly Brazil as being one of the BRICS economies. So, I mean, this is not a scenario whereby people necessarily are seeking to take advantage of that. The other thing I would say is that investment going into Brazil wouldn't necessarily go to another economy. Brazil is unique. Brazil is different. Brazil is not necessarily the same economy even as other countries in Latin America. So you do have different indicators and different requirements in terms of what people might be looking for. So, there might be a marginal impact or an impact at the margins, but most likely it's really a Brazil story.
And just quickly, Eric, Brazil was once described as the country of the future.
Right.
Do you think it currently has the tools to get back to those glory days?
Absolutely. I mean, Brazil is a country that I'm long-term bullish on. They're continent-sized. They're richly endowed in terms of natural resources. The people are entrepreneurial and smart. They're well-positioned geographically. They are going through a rough patch. There's no question about it. And the question will be, how quickly can the country come together, bind up its wounds, gain consensus? The next presidential elections will be 2018. That's going to be the real indicator, I think, when the country really finds which path it's going to go on and how quickly it's going to get there.
All right, always a pleasure, Eric Farnsworth. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
If you like what you just saw, follow us on social media and visit our website, cctv-america.com.